Kings Mountain was a command by committee. There were 10 colonels at Kings Mountain leading 10 regiments, and they walked, two abreast going down towards the road. And then when they got to where the mountain was, they started peeling off and surrounding that mountain. They knew where both sides knew where the others were. There were deserters that were going into Ferguson's camp, telling him about the Patriot plans. There were the local populace saying this young girl had carried 6 chickens to Ferguson up on Kings Mountain. She said, "Oh yeah, he's right there. He's right on top of that mountain." So they knew where he was, and they surrounded him, and they started popping away with their rifles.
So him being up there wasn't a strategic plan to try to. I mean, it seemed like he put himself in a position where he had a dead end.
He did have a dead end, but I mean, Kings Mountain is steep. It's impregnable. He thought
he had a fortress.
He really did. His men were armed with muskets, which were accurate up to 80 yards. The over mountain men were armed with hunting rifles, which were accurate to 200 yards.
The big, the big long rifles.
That's their hunting rifles. So Kings Mountain was uniquely set up to be advantageous to Patriot hunting rifles. Now, usually hunting rifles are not that effective in a battle. Muskets are more effective.
Shorter, easier to handle.
Well, you can load them in 20 seconds and fire 3 shots a minute. And it had that bayonet on there, which was the most feared weapon on the battlefield. The Patriot rifles, because Kings Mountain was wooded, the very top of the mountain was open and clear, and that's where the British were congregated. But the Patriot militiamen could stand behind a tree, and those rifles were most effective as sniper tools. And that's what they did. They started picking them off one by one. Now, Ferguson, bayonet charge
That's what you did.
This is what won at Camden. So he lined up his men on one end of the battlefield, and he charged down the mountain. He charged Campbell's Virginians. And those men, you do not stand up to a bayonet charge with an unloaded rifle. So they ran. They ran away, and all of a sudden now Ferguson has overextended those charging infantrymen. At the same time they did that, on the backside, the Patriots started creeping up the mountain, again taking pot shots. So Ferguson withdrew his men back to the top of the mountain. Then he charged the other end of the battlefield. He was encircled, charged him away. By then, now Campbell's Virginians come back into the fight. They resume their previous positions, start picking them off again. Things get closed tighter and tighter around Ferguson.
Now, how many men did Ferguson have start off with?
Well, he had 1,100, but 200 of them were out on foraging duty. And so he had 900 at Kings Mountain, and there were 900 Patriots during this time. Patrick Ferguson had 2 traveling companions with him. One was named Virginia Sal. The other was named Virginia Paul. Now, early on in the battle, one of those companions deserted to the Patriot side. And she told the commanders that Patrick Ferguson was wearing a checkered red and white hunting shirt.
Scottish.
Now, with these militiamen that Ferguson was leading, he did have 110 red-coated provincials from New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. So there were a number of red coats on top of the mountain with, 900 loyalist militiamen whose only uniform was a pine twig in their hats. And the Patriot militiamen had a piece of white paper or cloth in their hats. That's all the uniform that they had. That's how they could tell one from the other.
That pine twig wasn't very obvious either, I bet.
Well, if it wasn't a white piece of paper, then you shot at it.
Right.
But so one of those companions stated the fact that Ferguson was wearing that red and white checkered hunting shirt, and he was using his sword in his left hand because his right elbow was shattered at Brandywine and he couldn't use it. When the Patriots got word of that, and we think this is Shelby's regiment, they figured out who Ferguson was, and they let loose and blasted him, and 7 rifle balls went through his body.